Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, boo, but it means we have a new episode of GoJo Golic coming your way right now. Yay! You're welcome. Okay, so hello, darkness, my old friend. That is Aaron Rodgers finding out that the Jets actually is the darkness retreat. We will talk about his dismal performance and where the Jets go from here. Spoiler alert, there's only down. And Maryland Miracle, Jayden Daniels is him. He threw a Hail Mary at the end of that game to get the Commanders the W. Amazing. We will talk about that. And National Tight End Day. Travis Kelce finally got his first touchdown of the season, but all the tight ends showed out. We are going to talk about all that and more coming up on GoJo Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield with you guys. We are presented by Campbell's Chunky, the soup that eats like a meal, and we got a great show for you. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Jeff Monken, the Army head football coach, going to join us later in the show here, as after this weekend, Notre Dame Fighting Irish took down Navy, so they are the last of the undefeated among the service academies. They are the last of the ranked teams among the service academies as they were off this weekend. So excited to tap in with him and Jake Storiale, our boy from Talking Baseball, going to talk on John Boy Media, going to talk about what we had this weekend. The Dodgers getting out to a hot start, as noted by all the fireworks I heard around me in Los Angeles in the World Series against the Yankees. But Dad, you were out there in San Francisco for Sunday Night Football, so I don't feel like we can go anywhere but there. The Dallas Cowboys continue their slide. They now sit at 3-4. The 49ers get a 30-24 win last night, really off the back of a strong third quarter from Brock Purdy and that 49ers offense. It was a bit of a rock fight before that. And, Dad, I actually thought in the first half, hey, the Dallas Cowboys were doing a little bit more in the way of stopping the run, loading up the box, trying to get through the one thing that had been their Achilles heel on defense. And then it all wore away by the time we got to the second half. A late rally, but too little, too late. How did the 49ers pull this one off, Dad, as you were there calling this game for Westwood One?
Yeah, you're right. Dallas was stopping the run pretty well, and they were running the ball well. I think they had 40-some yards in the first half, and I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're basically last in the league, averaging 77 yards per game, and you were over half of that in the first half, that's actually a bright sign. And Dallas had the lead going into halftime 10-6, and it was a bit of a rock fight. One of the big differences was Brock Purdy. While Brock Purdy had completions and a good amount of completions in the first half, the completions weren't like leading the receiver. The receiver couldn't really run after the catch. There's completions, and then there's completions that give you yak yards. And yards after the catch have been an issue for San Francisco. Now, Christian McCaffrey being out has been a big reason. That San Francisco has been first or second since Kyle Shanahan's been there in 2018 with yards after the catch. They're second to last in the league this year. So, and part of that is Brock Purdy wasn't leading the receivers well. Well, in the second half, namely the third quarter, he was dialed in. He was leading the receivers. They got the rushing game going. The third quarter was, and you talk about adjustments at halftime, and San Francisco, they went to the ground game a little more, and again, Brock Purdy was a little more accurate with his completions. They outscored Dallas 21-0 in the third quarter, 167 yards to 16, 21 plays to 7, 9 first downs to none, and they held the ball for 11 minutes and 52 seconds of the third quarter. It went from 10-6 to 27-10 going into the fourth quarter, and we were like, okay, time for the film material, as this one is over. And then Dallas makes a run. Dallas with 2 TDs to CeeDee Lamb in the fourth quarter. One, just an absolute blown coverage by San Francisco. The other, 2 defenders ran into one another and knocked each other off stride, and CeeDee Lamb is wide open in the end zone again. CeeDee Lamb targeted, I think, 1.2 million times last night. 17 targets, 13 receptions. He's kind of like Cooper Kupp when he's healthy and Justin Jefferson. He's going to get the ball, and he gets the ball, except on the last drive. That was the thing. Dallas got back in this game. It's 30-24, and they had the ball with over 3 minutes to go, having just scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. They actually had momentum, and they went 4 plays and out, no yards. And 2 or 3 of the passes did not go CeeDee Lamb's way. So that was a bit surprising. But San Francisco, they gutted this out. The third quarter was huge. They held on. They are so nicked up, Mike. Jordan Mason, he hurt his shoulder in this game. He could have gone back in. He didn't. Isaac Guerrero, the rookie running back, went in and had a good game, but he got nicked up in the game. Deebo Samuel coming off the pneumonia. He hurt a rib. I mean, we talked to Fred Warner after the game and talk about the joy of the bye week this week, where they have a chance to actually heal up a little bit. Any team will justify a bye week saying it's the perfect time, but it really is the perfect time for San Francisco with all the nicks they have. And they got to 4-4. They were 3-4. Arizona's 4-4 after their win, and Seattle after their loss is 4-4. And watch out for the Rams. I know the Rams are, if they have Kupp and Nakua and Kyron Williams healthy, watch out for them. This is a wide open division.
Yeah, early in the season and in the offseason, I thought and predicted the NFC West could end up being one of the best divisions in the NFL, and injury has sort of robbed us of that across the board for all those teams, and some inconsistency. But at the very least, it's got a chance to be wildly entertaining down the stretch for that reason. The Rams re-entering the chat in a big way on Thursday Night Football last week. But yet, Dad, it feels like, boy, winning this game is almost a consolation prize because the 49ers team that is in this final year of whatever its current window is, we talked about maybe it's slammed shut on the Super Bowl for this current iteration of the roster, but to see more injuries mount up for this team, even coming off of this, where unfortunately beating the 2024 Cowboys does not really register as some major accomplishment or indictment of the quality of your football team. It feels more like checking a box at this point, because this Dallas Cowboys team on the other side, Dad, just struggles mightily. Before we get to them, though, a kudos and congratulations to George Kittle, who in this game honored National Tight End Day, where if you heard that and listened to any broadcast yesterday, drink every time they mention National Tight End Day, you will black out, you will die. George Kittle, 6 catches, 128 yards, and a touchdown in this game was sensational. And, Dad, in the midst of a season, we probably haven't talked enough about this, where a bunch of the big tight ends got off to slow those starts. Certainly this 49ers offense has been down a lot of its key weapons. George Kittle can't be healthy. He's wearing a rib protector bigger than most quarterbacks and looks like a keg out there running around on little legs, but still manages to go and be insanely productive both as a pass catcher and as a blocker. He's really been, in addition to Brock Purdy out there, one of the linchpins and heartbeats of this team while so much of that skill roster is depleted.
Well, that's exactly right. He had to be counted on with CMC out, obviously Brandon Ayuk with the knee injury after the holdout, and now Deebo Samuel with pneumonia and with the ribs. So he had to be the guy. And you mentioned on National Tight End Day, he has 500 catches. He went over the 500 catch barrier for the franchise. And what a franchise history. The other ones with 500 catches are Jerry Rice, Terrell Owens, Roger Craig, and Dwight Clark. I mean, that is some great company to be in. And as I mentioned on the broadcast, we talked about his receptions. Let's not forget what a great blocker he is. He's from that Iowa stock of played a tight end at Iowa, where it's the first thing you learn is that you better block. And with him blocking, with Kyle Juszczyk blocking, I mean, and that O-line, I mean, they had 223 yards rushing. Now, as you said, it's kind of like checking the box beating the Cowboys. The Cowboys are 27th in the league against the run. Check. San Francisco ran all over them to college rushing numbers. And Dallas is last in the league in rushing at 77 yards a game. They had 56 yards a game. So they continue to absolutely struggle, though they did make it interesting in the fourth quarter, and that was all Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. But Dak threw a couple of bad interceptions as well, and when he has to go downfield, he can get into trouble doing that. And they just had zero running game. They activated Dalvin Cook because Rico Dowdle was sick before the game, so they activated Dalvin Cook. But it's not like he's going to be a miracle worker. They just are not going to have a running game. It's something I talked about, and I certainly wasn't alone. They did not address it before the season, and that's one of the more than a few problems that they have.
Dak Prescott, you mentioned 2 interceptions for a third straight game, becomes the first Cowboys quarterback to do that in 32 years since Troy Aikman was wearing those Cowboys colors. And Dad, part of the problem continues to be how easy it is for other teams to go and affect the Cowboys without having to commit much. Some of those sacks and some of the issues for Dak Prescott that we saw were from pressure coming up front when they could throw a bunch of guys in the back end here. The 49ers the 49ers rushed 4 on the pass rush, 35 dropbacks last night. They only brought blitzers on 4 dropbacks against Dak Prescott, and on those dropbacks where they were only rushing 4, they had 9 of their pressures and both of their sacks over the course of that game, which means you got a bunch of guys in the back end that can make Dak hold the football longer and allow Nick Bosa and company to go and win those matchups, either against Terrence Steele, who we know has struggled and given up the most pressures on that Cowboys offensive line this season, or against Tyler Guyton, who was back in, the rookie left tackle who struggled at points during the season, was benched for points this season, and still last night, Dad, just doesn't seem to have it yet at this point in his NFL career.
Yeah, they are the third highest 4-man rushing rate team in the NFL at 78%. And Nick Sorensen just doesn't blitz because he doesn't need to. Now, the 2 passing touchdown drives for Dallas, Dak had time because they were longer drives, and it wore that front 4 out. I thought Sorensen, the DC, would maybe try and blitz a little bit, but you had D linemen with hands on their hips. You had Dallas running a quick offense, so they really couldn't rotate guys out there, and they got a couple of good drives going because they couldn't get a rush. And that's what San Francisco does. They rush the ball or they rush 4, and that's how they want to go about their business.
The Dallas Cowboys bear a striking resemblance to the 2024 New York Jets in that you seem to get flashes like that fourth quarter where things could be better, where, it looks like what we expect for 2 offenses that have that connective tissue of Mike McCarthy and the way that they want to do things here. Not as much pre-snap motion, put more onus on the players. Dak Prescott leads the NFL in percentage of throws into tight windows, where there's less than a yard of separation at the time of the catch for any receiver and the defender following them. And so these offenses are a high degree of difficulty that require a lot. And instead what you have are offensive lines giving up more pressure than we're used to. And quarterbacks mobility-wise, Dad, this is the other thing that stuck out with Dak Prescott last night as we get to the Cowboys problems coming off this, is Dak Prescott just at whatever it is, the sands of time, we know he's got the ankle injury and some of the lower body injuries in the past. When Dak Prescott's feet are off balance and he's on the move, just does not look as comfortable, not as mobile as he used to be. I mean, this is a guy that was a true dual threat quarterback in college that now appears to be anything but. And the frustration starting to boil over in Dallas as that realization maybe sinks in for them. We saw, I think, Trevon Diggs, was he the one going at a reporter in the locker room yesterday? Do we have that sound?
You took from that, you don't know football. You can't do nothing that I do. You can't go out there and do nothing. Stay in your lane, buddy. Stop playing me, bro.
Just asking a question, Trayvon. I mean, I'm happy to have you answer the question.
Out of that whole play, that's what you took for that? That's what you got from that? That whole play, that's what you got from that?
I'm asking. We can talk about it more. What were you doing then?
So, things are going well in Dallas, Dad. You got a chance to see this up close and personal for a team that just doesn't seem to find a lot of answers right now because everything that you described about their problems really hasn't and can't change, Dad. I mean, they tried to load up the box a bit at the beginning last night, but there's only so much you can do when you're robbing Peter to pay Paul on defense and other things start to pop up.
Listen, they load the box on the fourth highest rate in the league, and they're still 27th against the run. It's just not helping. They just don't have the players that can do it. And, I mean, it doesn't get any easier. They lose this game. Their next game, they're at the division-leading Falcons. Then they're at the two-loss Eagles. Then they're at the division-leading they're home to the division-leading Texans, and then at the division-leading Commanders. I mean, so it just gets even more difficult for this team that just can't find any answers.
Yeah, Trevon Diggs there, by the way, responding to a tweet that apparently questioned his effort at one point. But, Dad, just a symptom of the cause there, whether it's Jerry Jones going on radio stations and trying to fire hosts, the articles about the tours going on in Dallas, the football has been so abysmal relative to the standard they have set. Like, it's not even like we're positioning them against the 90s Cowboys that so many people think of. It's the Cowboys of the last 3 years that were a double-digit win football team and look far more competent than this. But I made that comparison to the Jets, Dad, because at this point, expecting anything else from either of these two teams does seem like a fool's errand, because at the end of the day, they're not built the right ways up front. Dallas more so on defense, and we know so much of that Micah Parsons being out means, you've got to blitz a lot more on defense than you might have otherwise. You could probably get away with more of what the 49ers did rushing for and being effective when you've got arguably one of the best pass rushers in the NFL out there, but they don't right now. And so that side of the ball struggling. The offensive line we've already gone over ad nauseum. And so, Dad, for both of these teams coming off this weekend, it feels like about that halfway mark. I know, now because of the way the schedule is set up, there's no real halfway mark in a 17-week season. But you look at this, Dad, and just feel like now all of a sudden for the Cowboys and Jets, well, we'll talk about them because the Cowboys have Jerry and the Star and because the Jets have Aaron Rodgers, there's really not a substantive football conversation to have because both of these teams are broken.
Yeah, I mean, they are. So I said Dallas's schedule. Dallas just doesn't have the manpower, and without Micah Parsons and Lawrence on the D line, that certainly is going to continue to hurt them. But they were shorthanded coming into the season. And for the 49ers, injuries are just crushing this team. It's a very competitive NFC West. But I still, even with Dallas is basically done. But San Francisco, they're in that competitive division, so they're obviously in it. But they just don't have the look or the feel like that Super Bowl team from last year at this point. And when they get healthy, they're supposed to get Christian McCaffrey back soon. We'll see how long that can last. But they just don't have that feel yet. It's like they tried to get through this game to get to the bye to heal up.
And they did. And going into the bye off that, feeling off a win is huge for them. I wanted to ask you this, Dad, because Dak Prescott already got paid. He's going to be there as much as people might ask questions about him still at certain times, despite the whole resume that we've seen. Quarterback on the other side's coming up on a payday. Brock Purdy last night at certain points was the leading rusher for the 49ers. He finished with 8 carries for 56 yards. We know most of those on scramble plays because of the nature of his game. But getting to see Brock Purdy in person in a year where that offense has changed so much, how did you evaluate his performance as his quest for that payday continues?
Well, he's had some shaky first halves, and this was one of them. Again, there's different kinds of completions. And for a team that's used to being number one with yards after the catch, and I know that has a lot to do with Christian McCaffrey and others that are injured, but that was a staple of this offense. And we've heard Brock Purdy say in other games, I was shaky in the first half and picked it up in the second half. And that's what he did here. While there were completions in the first half, as I said, it was making receivers reach for the ball, go down low for the ball, behind the receivers where it would still be a completion, but they didn't have the ability to get yards after the catch. In the second half, his running was on point and his passing was so on point, leading the receivers perfectly into running after the catch. So he definitely settled in the second half.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, too, this year, the structure of the offense is just different. You look at the routes they are dialing up, the things that Kyle Shanahan is calling, and I think it's an admission, hey, the players we have out there right now are not guys sans George Kittle that we really want to rely on getting yards after the catch. And so how can we do that? Reorient things. Look a little bit more like what Mike McDaniel has done when Tua and that offense are healthy and getting the ball to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and then use Brock Purdy's legs as an actual weapon to go out and get a big win for them as they head into a bye and try and get healthy.
Welcome Welcome back to GoJo and Golic, Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. It is a beautiful Monday morning, which means there's only one thing to do, okay? Mic'd up Monday time. Let's start with one of the biggest surprises of the Sunday slate. The Browns putting Jameis Winston under center leads to an upset win over the Ravens, and Jameis continues to be a content factory.
From Detroit that I really admire, named Eminem. He said, you only get one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow. This opportunity lasts once in a lifetime. And I know I got a quote, Eminem, he from Detroit, he right up the road, but man, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful that the Lord provided me with this opportunity. I'm grateful for my teammates, my coaches, and these amazing fans.
It is just chef's kiss every time we put Jameis in front of a microphone. He got the quote wrong, but we forgive him after that performance.
Yeah, Jameis Winston, who before the game in the interview with Amanda Balionis was equally as entertaining, equally as sticking to the script. Jameis is a guy that's got a very well-defined script in his head for the show that only he's doing, that he also loses interest in somewhere through there and just start getting lines wrong. But, Dad, he went out there and proved once again, as long as you're not Deshaun Watson, you've got a pretty good chance for throwing for 300 yards in Kevin Stefanski's offense in a winning effort where, man alive, I feel bad for our dude Kyle Hamilton, who dropped what would have been an easy game-ending interception on the final drive of that game, where Jameis Winston does go on to throw the go-ahead touchdown in this one in an afternoon where he was 27 for 41, 334 yards, and 3 touchdowns in this game in his first start in 2 years. And, Dad, I kind of mentioned it off the top, but that really is the takeaway. Jameis Winston throws for 300 yards in his first game starting in 2 years. Joe Flacco threw for 300 yards in 6 of his 7 games starting for the Browns at the end of last season. Deshaun Watson had 19 games in a Browns uniform and failed to do that. It's not just reacting to yesterday. This is a very large sample size that now says, if you are the Browns, I understand what the money says, but on the field, there is no earthly world where you can justify putting Deshaun Watson back out on that field as a starting quarterback with intention for the Browns that shouldn't cause a riot within your fan base and certainly within the locker room amongst the other 52 guys that have to go out there and try and act like they're putting their best foot forward in that game.
Yeah, the Haslams put the Browns organization in this situation, and they're the owner, so they signed the check so they can do that. And they're the ones that gave him the fully guaranteed deal. But you're right, his days as the starting quarterback or for the Browns, and quite honestly, a starting quarterback in the league, are probably over. The Browns are going to be looking for a quarterback. Jameis Winston looking for another chance. He does well. We'll see what the situation is, if it can be consistent throughout the year. But you mentioned 3 touchdowns. Doesn't throw an interception. He did lose a fumble, so he did have 1 turnover, but no interceptions, hanging on to the ball. And that last drive, you're right, as soon as Kyle Hamilton dropped that, I mean, that was such, in everybody's mind, an easy pick, and he had it in his hands and bobbled it twice before dropping it. You were just like, uh-oh, what's going to happen? Next play, Cedric Tillman, 38-yard touchdown, gets behind the defense, and it just absolutely stuns Baltimore in clearly the biggest upset of the day. But this team just functions so much better without Deshaun Watson at quarterback.
And I understand it's the Ravens secondary. Like, everybody this year is able to get big chunks of yards against the Ravens secondary. And who's to say that Deshaun Watson may not have found a way to have a much better day because of what that group affords you? But he's had plenty of opportunities and still hasn't. And ignoring that sample size to me seems like it'd be foolish at this point. The Browns defense, by the way, like, everyone felt the lift. You saw that entire team. The Browns defense, 3 sacks, 7 TFLs, 5 passes defense. That was a group that looked much more like itself. And for large stretches of the day, Dad, was able to frustrate this Ravens offense that still put up some numbers late. I mean, Lamar Jackson's still playing MVP caliber football, but I thought that day much more about the other side. Both teams get a little bit banged up coming off this one, but again, the takeaway there seems to be anyone but Deshaun at quarterback for this Cleveland Browns team. Jesse, let's move on to the darkness. Aaron Bain Rodgers had some more interesting quotes after the Jets loss.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this, how they continue to fall on their face week after week, despite, acquiring all of Aaron Rodgers' friends. He's just asked for friends to come join him, and they keep saying, okay, but it's not working. So after the loss, Jeff Olbrich said that the Jets were in a moment of darkness, and Aaron Rodgers had this to say when he was asked about it.
Been in the darkness. You got to go in there, make peace with it. Offensively, our goal has just got to be to score 30. Doesn't matter what the other two sides are doing. You know, we have trust in our defense and teams, but if we're not scoring 30, we're underachieving. This offense can do that every single week.
He was born in the darkness. He was molded by it, but he's still not playing well enough to get a W. So what do we think about this?
Kind of like we said off top with the Cowboys, Dad, the Jets are just an underwhelming, flawed football team, and they can acquire as many of Aaron Rodgers' former friends in the wide receiver room as they want. Unfortunately, the offensive line cannot close the door on teams by trying to run the football out, open up big enough lanes there, and they can't adequately protect a quarterback who at this point athletically is not the guy he used to be either. Aaron Rodgers, we know, has been dealing with a banged-up hamstring recently, but also just a guy at 40 coming off an Achilles injury is not the same version of early Aaron Rodgers that captivated us for so long. And so what you end up getting is a team that's good sometimes and has flashes. We talked, the offense has a high degree of difficulty, and on the other side got a renewed effort in the trenches from a Patriots team that lost their starting quarterback early on in this game. Drake May leaves with a concussion, and so Jacoby Brissett ends up becoming the one to come back and author this win for a Patriots team that just got called soft by their head coach. So I guess point in the motivation column for Gerard Mayo and the Patriots coming off this win, but the Jets, again, just especially in the trenches, that's where the issue's been, and that's why so many people sort of rolled their eyes when they acquired Davante Adams, because it was only going to help so much.
And listen, I get it. I mean, in for a penny, in for a pound, right? I mean, you brought in Aaron Rodgers, throw all your resources you can to try and get better this year. And that's why they went for Davante Adams. That's why they end up signing Hassan Reddick and don't trade him away. They are all in it for this year, and it's not going to happen. So it could just be a massive overhaul next year. I just don't see them coming back and trying to rerun it with this group next year, unless they feel if they just get better on the offensive line, they can change the fortunes. But I mean, 2-6 with, and Aaron's right, they have talent on offense with Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, and Davante Adams. But boy, they scored 24 twice this year, 22 in this one in the loss. It's just not enough. This offense is just not powerful enough. Too much is being put on the defense. And kudos to Jacoby Brissett, leading 2 fourth-quarter drives after, Drake May only had 6 passes before he took a shot to the head and was concussed. So he comes back in, and the players just absolutely love Jacoby Brissett and his leadership. But you just wonder, the Jets, I mean, scratching their head at their inability to produce on the offensive side, and you just wonder if it's going to be, okay, we have to this is no more a 1 or possibly 2-year experiment, not counting last year, and you just end it after this year and move on. And it might be, who knows, it might be everybody moving on. I mean, did the firing of Robert Saleh do anything? I mean, you made a move to look like you're making a move. You changed play callers, which is what everybody thought should have happened anyway, and it hasn't made a difference. Firing Robert Saleh hasn't made a difference. Changing play callers hasn't made one damn bit of difference.
0-3 since firing Robert Saleh, who now is hanging out with his friends in Green Bay, and I'd imagine having a really good time in places he won't talk about at parties, enjoying watching the continued Jet demise, even though he said publicly he's still rooting for them. I get all that. We're human beings. And watching this, which you're right, Dad, I don't know who in Jetsland would look and say that it would be a good idea to sign up for this again next year, because what you bet on was something closer to what you had in the MVP seasons from Aaron Rodgers. Maybe not all the way back there, because again, injury would probably make that impossible at this point, but you've gotten nowhere near that. He is no longer a quarterback that can overcome some of the other deficiencies in this roster, and I just don't think you'll have time. Those tackles, unfortunately, look old, even though we like both of them, and it's just not netting you an offense that functions anywhere near as well as it needs to support that defense. Jesse, let's get to our next bit of sound here from the Philadelphia Eagles, who appear to have turned a corner now as well.
Yeah, so they've been under fire for not scoring in the first quarter, but they've been putting up enough points in the other 3 to get the W's there. Jalen Hurts had a huge game yesterday, 3 rushing touchdowns, but says the offense still isn't where it needs to be.
Trend forward. I don't think we're there yet. I think we're slowly finding it and trying to piece things together. Ultimately, it comes down to cadence and rhythm and how we play, and then in the end, optimizing all of the talent that we have.
So despite the first quarter issues, looks like the Eagles are kind of quietly turning things around here, right, guys?
Yeah, and Dad, turning things around, I think still with really Saquon Barkley as the heartbeat of this team, up over 100 yards again in this game, averaging just under 5 yards a carry. But the other part's unsurprising. Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown come back, and the passing offense all of a sudden has a place to go that helps everybody out here, that helps everything operate more on time. I saw Fred Johnson, who was filling in at left tackle for the injured Jordan Mailata, who had been an area of concern, got matched up in this game plenty with Trey Hendrickson and only allowed one pressure on the day. Did a phenomenal job in conjunction with the rest of that. And so this Eagles offense has its parts back. As the offensive line, quite honestly, we saw briefly Lane Johnson was on the ground, looked like he was in pain. Thankfully, he was able to come back in that game, but they've already had to replace bodies up there in the unit that's been, I think, the face of that franchise for the last few years. And now they're finding their way against a Bengals team that got a little bit nicked up with their core skill group guys. T. Higgins, a late scratch from this game that really just threw off the balance of what we thought would lift them, Dad. That wide receiver duo operating at an incredible frenetic pace ends up then instead creating an opportunity for Philly's defense to hone in on Jamar Chase. So you get a good Mike Gesicki game, but I'm sure if you're Philadelphia, that's exactly what you would sign up for every single time if you're going to face that Bengals team on who would have to beat you.
Oh, without a doubt. You let Gesicki have all the catches he can have. You look at what Gesicki had 7 catches, averaged 10 yards of reception. Jamar Chase had 9 catches, averaged 6 yards a reception. The next closest receiver was Zach Moss, the running back, who had 4 catches, averaged 7 yards a catch. So all quick throws, all quick tackles by the Eagles, which is what you want to do. We're in an NFL of short throws that you try and turn into long gains. You look at Devontae Brown, 6 catches, average 14 yards. A.J. Brown, 5 catches, average 16 yards. Grant Calcaterra averaged 19 yards. So whether it's deeper passes or shorter passes, you're turning into yards after the catch. The Bengals weren't doing it. Certainly they got thrown off with T. Higgins. You're right. But just not being able to get the ball down the field. And the weakness for the Bengals has been their defense. It's been their defense all year. And it proved to be once again.
Yep, it did there, certainly. That was a group what came into this game basically saying it was the Eagles' pass defense against the Cincinnati Bengals' rush defense, and really very few parts of the Cincinnati defense showed up in this one. Yet, man, what felt like vintage Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia, too, that 45-yard touchdown pass to Devonta Smith, a great drop in the bucket off a play-action rep where he hits him right in the back of the end zone. And I think that's what I'd like to see, Dad, because obviously Jalen Hurts is a quarterback that's come under some scrutiny this season as things have gone awry. His relationship with Nick Sirianni, the head coach, has always been the subject of a lot of attention on the outside world. Can A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith be out there long enough to see if we can explore if he can get back close to what 2022 looked like from Jalen Hurts as a passer?
Yeah, and quite honestly, the running game, as I mentioned, the two biggest pickups that are producing the most is the most undervalued position on the field, running back. Now, while Baltimore lost, Derrick Henry still averaged, I believe, over 5 yards a carry. He still leads the league in rushing. He's 50 yards away from 1,000 yards. And taking over second place in the league is Saquon Barkley, who had over 100 yards rushing. He's averaging almost 6 yards per carry. These two guys have really, really helped their team. So we talk about the duo receivers for Philadelphia, but Saquon Barkley is running well. That O-line that has certainly taken some hits this year with Kelsey being out. You mentioned Lane Johnson being nicked up, others being nicked up at times. Saquon is running the ball well, and that is certainly helping this offense.
Yeah, and I think you look at the formula for, because so many people want to use this as an indictment of what do we do with running backs now? Are they back? Is the future of that position much brighter since two guys that signed big free agent deals and moved teams this offseason are having so much success? I think like a lot of things, we talk about this with quarterback, running back, it's no different. Your environment matters. And both of these guys walked into situations where these are offenses with extremely diverse running games that use a lot of different things to get these guys the ball, that have mobile quarterbacks and have receiving options to open things up. They're balanced offenses, and when you bring someone into that, like the 49ers did with Christian McCaffrey years ago, it can take you to the next level because of what a unique mismatch these guys are coming out of the backfield, whether it's runners, whether it's guys with the balls in their hands as pass catchers. It's been incredible to watch, and I'm happy to see that success for them.
to GoJo and Golic, Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. Let's discuss the big winners and losers from the weekend, starting with the Commanders. We saw a battle of the 1 and 2 picks yesterday, and it did not disappoint. Jayden Daniels went out there, battled through rib injury, did his thing, showed some real fortitude, ultimately winning the game on a 52-yard Hail Mary. What did you guys think of his play, and is the league in good hands here?
Yeah, Dad, this is an interesting game between these two, right? You knew Jayden was coming into this banged up, and really on the other side, for Caleb Williams, it was 3 quarters that were relatively pedestrian before a 4th quarter where he lit up and started executing some drives that ended in scores for Chicago and had them in position to win this game. This was signed, sealed, and delivered. But Jayden Daniels, and I think what showed through on that final drive, Dad, was the same thing that's really been the sell for him so far, is the poise in situations that sometimes drown other rookies. Anthony Richardson was a perfect foil for that yesterday as the Colts lost to the Houston Texans, and you got into some of those 2-minute situations and spots where he needed to be going out of bounds and didn't manage the clock the right way. For Jayden Daniels, you saw Tony Romo going over a lot of that game script at the time, and credit to Dan Quinn and company, credit to Cliff Kingsbury, perfectly executed, prepared for that moment, gave him an opportunity to go for the crack at the end of it, and then on the other side, you just got this opportunity to go up, give your guys a chance, and Noah Brown waiting there in the end zone. And Dad, you can talk about this as from a defensive side, how you're going about this, but offensively, they were talking about it in the broadcast, and it's true. You go in and you walk through this every week, the Hail Mary stuff, and usually what you're trying to create is a triangle back there where you've got 2 guys that are going, you've got 1 guy at the point usually trying to go up there and get it, and then you've got someone waiting on that back end trying to be the guy that potentially fields it if something pops up like that in the front or back. So you create an area where you kind of have a splash zone ready for anything to happen, and credit to Washington. They were ready for it to happen, whereas on the other side, Tyreek Stevenson's going to have a tough time walking this one back in the local media this week, I'm sure.
Yeah. First off, your comments about Jayden Daniels are spot on. His poise that he shows, and unfortunately, Anthony Richardson is the foil on the other side of just somewhat panicking in a pressure situation. Jayden Daniels just does not, whether he's throwing the ball or whether he's taking off and running the ball. Because you were wondering if he even was going to play in this game. Ends up throwing for 326 yards and a touchdown. No interceptions again. So he is just leading this team incredibly well. And this was a bit of a slog. All field goals, 12-0 with a lead. But then there's the Bears who score and take the lead. It's so, toward the end of the game for the first time, it was absolutely amazing. That Hail Mary play. So they got in position for the Hail Mary play. Now, what did the Bears do wrong? You could start with the rush. They had a 3-man rush and a spy. Why the hell are you spying Jayden Daniels when they have to go to the end zone and he throws it 60-some yards in the air? TJ Edwards was the spy, and I'm not blaming him. If that's the call, that's the call. But they had a 3-man rush that really wasn't getting anywhere, and TJ Edwards just hanging out at the line of scrimmage, making sure Jayden Daniels didn't run. I'm like, what in the hell are you doing that for? What a complete waste of personnel on the field. And then to get to the Hail Mary, you're right. It's worked on every play. It can't really be worked full go in practice. You don't have everybody jump in practice because you don't want anybody coming down and rolling an ankle. So it's basically just the offense jumps. And you have 1 jumper. And the jumper for Washington was Zach Ertz, the 6'5" tight end. He was the guy that was supposed to jump and either catch it or tip the ball. If you're on the defensive side, and Tyreek Stevenson, you're right, it's going to have some questions to answer. He was over in the side of the end zone while the play was going on, talking smack to the fans, and then ran over and got in the mess of players. So what you want to do
he
is
was the one that ended up tipping the pass up. Like, that's why insult got added to injury. Here is his late addition. I saw someone say if he had actually just stayed over and taunted fans, we might not be talking about this. But his hand is quite literally the one that went over and popped it up into Noah Brown's.
So the job of the defensive players is to basically have wall off, like you're a power forward. You want to block out receivers. You want to be in front of receivers and kind of wall them off. and you saw some defenders doing it and others not. And basically, you only want one or two guys to jump. The rest stay and walled off just in case the ball pops in the air. You're able to wall off the offensive player. But basically everybody jumped for the Bears, so there was nobody left. So you either want to wall off or you want to be the deepest man, because as soon as that ball is tipped, you can mug a receiver. So if there was somebody on Noah Brown, as soon as that ball was tipped, you could basically tackle Noah Brown because the ball's tipped. There's no more pass interference. So you could, and basically pass interference isn't going to get called anyway. But once the ball's tipped, you can hit the receiver because there's no more pass interference. So they did, starting from the rush, they handled that about as poorly as you can handle it.
Yeah, it's some tough moments there to go along with some tough coaching moments at the end of this game. I love a good thick six as much as anybody, but unfortunately, Shane Waldron and company and the decision they made with the game on the line to hand the ball off to their offensive lineman fullback in a play that ultimately turns into a fumble that gives Washington another chance to end this game. To go along with some other things, Dad, the fire is going to continue to rise around Matt Eberflus this season as Caleb Williams did some more of the things, extracurricular, creating with his legs, buying time and scrambling. More of the USC Caleb is starting to show up. And so the decision, like I said before the season, is going to fall on, do the Bears want Matt Eberflus to be the one to do this? And there have been enough moments starting to pop up where I wonder if that's going to be the case when it's all said and done this season.
And with Caleb Williams, he was just 10 of 24 for 131 yards. He reminds me a bit of Baker Mayfield in Cleveland, where trying to just create things on the run, right? Whether he runs the ball or whether he throws it out of the pocket. You just wonder what he's going to create. Sometimes it looks good, and sometimes it looks bad. Now, he's a rookie, and he'll hopefully grow into the position, and hopefully they'll get a better offensive line to protect him so he can stay in the pocket a little more. But you just kind of hold your breath. Is it going to be a great Caleb Williams play, or is it going to be a stinker play? And you just don't have the consistency yet there.
No, and again, I think part of that's the foundation around him. DeAndre Swift, big game, though. Some things starting to come to fruition there, but they lose in wild fashion in that game. Dad, let's move through the rest of some of these winners and losers somewhat quickly here. Dan Campbell and the Lions, this was a game I didn't see much of live and had to go back and watch some of against Tennessee. I expected them to beat the hell out of the Titans. I did not expect that in the third quarter the Lions would have more points, 42, than Jared Goff had passing yards, 28, early on in that quarter. Jared Goff finished this game 12 of 15 for 85 yards. And Jahmyr Gibbs certainly had a day, but Dad, multiple special teams touchdowns. This one, a win in every phase for a Lions team that just flat out outclassed the Titans squad searching for answers.
I mean, early on in this game, while the Lions had the lead, they had more return yards than total yards. The return teams were setting them up to short fields, and they were cashing in. This was just an ass whooping. I mean, absolute ass whooping. I mean, Detroit is I would think you would agree, is clearly the best team in the NFL. I mean, they are just putting it on teams and showing that they are the best team. We'll see if that ends that way, but right now they're the best team, and they got it on all phases, from all three phases of the team yesterday.
Yeah, unfun game to analyze when you've got, again, as much in the kick return game as they did in this one. Throws everything else out of whack. We knew Detroit was a better team than them. We know Mason Rudolph isn't the solve for what's gone on with Will Levis there in Tennessee, and so they'll continue to search for answers. Meanwhile, Dad, answers coming in the form of DeAndre Hopkins making his debut for the Kansas City Chiefs. They go out there and get a pretty close win against the Las Vegas Raiders in a rivalry with no love lost. We saw plenty of footage of that Kermit the Frog doll that made its appearance during training camp that Patrick Mahomes commented on during the week. So, Dad, Mahomes becomes the fastest quarterback to reach 30,000 passing yards in this game with 103 games under his belt. And Travis Kelce on National Tight End Day, gets his first regular season touchdown, not only of this year, but in quite a while, Dad. What did you make of DeAndre Hopkins' addition to this offense and just in general the way the Chiefs continue to evolve this season?
Well, I mean, they continue to win, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. They don't look like this dominant team. DeAndre Hopkins had 2 catches for 29 yards, one early in the game, but they're getting it done. This was not a 2-score game until 5 minutes to go in the game when it was 27-13. It was a 1-score game till 5 minutes to go in the game. Vegas was hanging with them. And so this is a Chief team that knows how to win. They keep winning, but they're not doing it in the dominant way that we've seen 2-3 years ago. Even last year, Pat Mahomes said, even winning the Super Bowl, we've already talked about this, he wasn't happy with the offense. Well, I mean, they're getting the job done, but not in a dominant way. And maybe we just got spoiled to that way, right? So maybe we should understand that other teams get better and other teams play better, and it's tough to stay at the absolute top of your game, yet they're still 7-0, the only undefeated team in the NFL. So obviously you have to give them credit for that.
Mahomes throws for 262, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception in this game off a tipped pass, so hard to blame him too much for that. I was surprised early on how much Gardner Minshew in this offense for the Raiders were able to move the ball against Kansas City, but give that defense credit. They bowed up, made some huge plays at the end. You had a chance early on where a turnover gave them the ball off that Mahomes interception inside the 10-yard line, and a goal line stand later. They go 4 downs of absolutely shutting the door on that Raiders offense. So the Chiefs defense still the class of this team, giving the offense plenty of time and opportunity for guys like Xavier Worthy to continue to grow into their roles in this offense, but Travis Kelce once again steadying the ship for Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, Las Vegas, we talk about Dallas's rushing attack. Las Vegas is just horrible. 21 carries, 33 yards. Like I said, in a 1-score game till 5 minutes to go in the game, and they had absolutely dreck for a running game. So really, really hurt them.
All right, I want to get to some losers here, Dad, and I want to start off with the Indianapolis Colts. We mentioned a little bit Anthony Richardson relative to his other peers in the NFL. We were comparing him to some rookies. We know he's not, although ostensibly because of how early the injury happened last year, that might be the case. And it was another pretty brutal outing in terms of his actual numbers in this game as a passer, which we can get to. Anthony Richardson finished 10 of 32 for 175 yards, but was sacked 5 times in this game, was rushed 6 times for 45 yards, so much so that he actually pulled himself out of the game. This was Anthony Richardson talking about a moment where he pulled himself out of the game after a couple of rushing attempts for what was a 3rd and super long handoff where Joe Flacco came in and did exactly what they thought we were going to do. We don't have sound on that, but Dad, had you ever seen anything like that? We know quarterbacks who rush this much are somewhat of a new phenomenon in the NFL still, and he basically just said, I was gassed after a couple of plays where I had to use my legs in a unique way.
Normally when you see a running back with a long run or a wide receiver with a long reception, sometimes they'll tap the hat and head out for a play. Rarely you see that with a quarterback. But Anthony Richardson just absolutely struggling. You gave his numbers. He had an interception. He fumbled the ball twice and lost one of them. And in crunch time, it's just a panic mode. And he's just not settling in to the position. He's running. Sometimes, a young quarterback will run before he needs to run because he'll trust his legs more than he trusts his arm. And he sees he's not passing the ball well. He's under 50% completion. So he has a lack of confidence in his arm and has more confidence in his legs. It's a bad combination. Again, really, it's his rookie year after just 4 games last year. But you really hope you should start to see some improvement. And we just have not seen it out of him.
It's been fleeting. He hasn't lost any confidence, though. Like he said, I've been a quarterback my whole life. I believe I can do this. I just have unique gifts as a runner. And so he believes he's going to get judged differently because of that. And, Dad, to his defense, they had a chance to win this game. The Texans get a 23-20 win. Jonathan Taylor rushes for over 100 yards, which Anthony Richardson has an effect on because of his mobility here. Josh Downs, 4 catches for 109 yards. He, now that he's healthy again, has been a guy that's been a difference maker in the pass game. So for Anthony Richardson, at the very least, you can point to and say, I almost still allowed us to win this football game, even though I also contributed to us losing it at certain points too.
Well, it's exactly right. He's kind of the negative to the offense right now, unfortunately, overall. For an offense that's kind of getting their legs under it, he's struggling to get his legs underneath him.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So going to be interesting to see if the Colts can maintain that dedication to a quarterback that just needs time. And maybe it'll prove that he's not, unfortunately, worth that time in the way that they thought when they drafted him. But at the very least, with the amount of draft capital that you spent on Anthony Richardson, this has to be the world for the Indianapolis Colts in the here and now, because Joe Flacco, I don't think, presents some sort of Super Bowl ceiling option coming off the bench for them in relief. All right, guys, it's time for DraftKings crowning moments as we look at some of your best bet slips from over the weekends. And we want winners. We want people who want to win. And Brian Lustig has a chance to become a big winner on National Tight End Day weekend. He has a 10-leg parlay with a wager that could potentially net him $1 turning into $32,453 off the backs of all of this tight end success. You might have been sick of hearing about it on broadcast, but this man just needs to hear it one more time. A 10-leg parlay of touchdown scores at the tight end position that included Cade Otton, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, and others. Needs only Pat Freiermuth to score on Monday Night Football the cash. Crowning Moments is presented by DraftKings. Submit your winning bets for a chance to be featured on DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. We said a couple weeks ago, as a fan, sometimes there's nothing better than your team being on a bye when all the chaos of college football can be going on right now. We'll see if it's true for Coach as well, as Jeff Monken, the head coach of the Army Black Knights football team, undefeated and ranked number 21 in the latest AP poll, kind enough to join us now coming off of their bye. So, Coach, thanks for joining us. How are you feeling coming off the bye weekend?
Oh, I hope our team's a little more rested. I'm excited to play again this weekend. Obviously, a big game coming up for us on Saturday. So it's nice to get these buys in the middle of the year. Frankly, just the nicks and dings and the feelings of just getting pounded every week, that takes its toll. So it's nice to get a little break for our team.
It seems no matter when a bye is, a team can justify why it's the perfect time for a bye, can't they?
Well, I don't know if there's a perfect time. It just sometimes you feel like you really need one, and you wish you had one, and usually when those roll along, I think some people think, well, you lose momentum or you lose, you kind of had things rolling, and I think it's good. It's good to get back to basics a little bit and really give our guys a chance to rest and recover, because it's a long season. College football season is a long season, so we hopefully used it to our advantage.
It is a long season, and even longer now with so many of the changes in the sport. But you mentioned the momentum for you guys, over 40 points on offense in your last 4 games. Bryson Daly has become a household name at quarterback this year. And in a world with an expanded playoff where one of the highest ranked Group of 5 conference championship goes into it, you guys have now been thrust into that conversation. Is that something that you've had to address with your team as the added attention on you guys being undefeated is mounted week after week?
Frankly, it's just hard enough for us to win the next game. So that really is all we focused on. Our team is really very mature, I think, from that regard. And we got a lot of older guys that have played a good bit of football, and they really have handled it very professionally. I've been really pleased with the leadership in our locker room, and we've been able to just focus on the next game. And certainly this one coming up on Saturday those games for us against the other academies mean more than any games on our schedule, playing for the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. So there's I assure you, a laser focus on trying to do the best we can to prepare for Saturday.
So each of the last 2 years you were 6-6. Now you're sitting undefeated. What's been the difference of this year between the last 2 years?
We've just been able to execute a little better this year than we have in the past. And each of those 2 seasons, I will say, it's disappointing to not have a chance to go to a bowl game, and that is a reward for a good season, and it's a great experience for college football players to be able to do that. We started out the 22 season, we were 1-4 and finished 6-6. Last year we started out 2-4 and we finished 6-6. So I've really been proud of our teams and the leadership and the toughness they've showed to be resilient enough to win toward the back end of the season. And this year, we just have played well enough to win. And a lot of those guys that are playing for us now, our offensive line, our quarterback, several of the guys on defense have played a lot of football for us, even through those 2 seasons I just mentioned, as young guys, and learn resiliency, learn leadership. And it's kind of just come together for us, at least to this point. But the most challenging part of our season is ahead of us, and that's starting this weekend with the game against Air Force for the Commander-in-Chief's, the first game of the Commander-in-Chief's trophy.
Yeah, Coach. I mean, the first game you mentioned, you got Air Force coming up this weekend. We know that Army-Navy game at the end of the season, such a staple of college football. But as people have talked about that possibility where you guys could have potentially met and could still potentially meet Navy in the AAC championship game as a conference game now, does that change the dynamic of this at all? Is that something you'd thought about going towards the end of the season?
No, I mean, we all look at what is out ahead of us, but there's no more important game than the one this Saturday. And the game this Saturday and the game on the second Saturday in December when we play the Army-Navy game, those are the 2 biggest games on our schedule. The source of pride for us that it is to have the Commander-in-Chief's trophy, to win the Commander-in-Chief's trophy, which we were able to do last year, fortunately. I mean, that's the most important tangible goal we have in our program. So we always think about those games. We don't apologize for it. It's always on our mind. Everywhere you walk around this campus, in this building, it says beat Navy. Those are big games, and Navy's having a great year. They've got a really good football team, and that game is always a challenge. And it hasn't mattered year in and year out what the records have been or what happened the week before. Those games just always seem to be battles to the very end, and hopefully we'll be able to play well enough to make it a battle this year.
Well, you're playing well enough right now, rushing for 359 yards on the ground, tops in the nation. You had the leading rusher to a TDs with Bryson Daly. He's already surpassed his touchdowns and his rushing yards from last year. What's been the difference for him from last year to this year?
certainly his maturity and his growth as a player. He's really doing a great job as a leader for us, and he's elevated the play of everybody on our offense and really everybody on our football team. The confidence that our team has in him, the toughness and just how physical he is when he plays the game, I think carries over to everybody on the football team. I can't say enough for the job that Coach Worley's done, our offensive coordinator, and he's coached Bryson here, been our quarterback's coach, and he's just really doing a good job of putting Bryson in position and our offense in position to, I think, maximize his strengths, Bryson's strengths as a runner and a thrower, and so it's been a good start to the season. There's a lot of football left to play, as we mentioned, and our toughest games are coming up. So we're going to, I think, really find out what kind of football team we have here this coming weekend and in the weeks to follow.
Anyone who's watched you guys can see you guys have a quality football team that's gone out and put that on and done it, Coach, the way you guys have always done it there. We know the academies, you operate differently in so many ways than the rest of college football. Has that felt even more pronounced in the last few years with all of the changes, with name, image, and likeness and the transfer portal really becoming such a dominant conversation in the sport? Have you guys felt even more of that? I don't know if it's a badge of honor the way you guys wear it, where it's something you take pride in doing it differently than everybody else?
Well, we've always had to do it differently here. Nothing really has changed here. And our players have always had access to the transfer portal if they decided they wanted to leave. We've just never had access to transfers coming in. And so it's kind of business as usual for us. I'm just really proud of our team. I'm proud of our coaching staff, how they've developed the players in our program, our strength staff, and the great job that they do, and getting the most out of our players. I think a lot of attention certainly has been on Bryson Daly and the great season he's had so far, and he's played really well, and our offense has played well. But our defense is playing great defense right now. And Nate Woody's been our defensive coordinator for the last 5 years. He's a terrific football coach. And that is really, when we talk about complementary football, I think the way that we play on offense needs to complement who we are on defense. And I think what we're doing right now with the football and what we're doing offensively, how Cody calls the game and really attempts to control games on offense by running the football and controlling the clock, that helps us play good defense. And so we try to get the best people and the best players that we can, that are available to us, and bring them into our program and retain them, develop them, and that they become the players as juniors and seniors that we hoped they would be. And we still are a team. If you look at our 22 starters, including the guys that are specialists, our kicker, punter, snapper, most of our guys are older guys, veteran guys, and so you have a mature team when you have a team like that, and I really have a lot of confidence in the leadership in that group. So so far we've been able to win the games we played. I hope it'll continue this weekend.
Yeah, you talk about that. The offense gets the lion's share of the conversation. That defense, you gave up 10 or less 4 times, 14 twice, and then just 28 to East Carolina that scored the most on you. But the defense has been playing well. You talked about the players and such, and players you get to deal with. You got into coaching, I think, in '89 as a GA at Hawaii. Is it refreshing as this landscape has changed, knowing you don't have to talk to players about NIL and about the money that they could make?
I think it's great that student athletes are able to benefit with their name, image, and likeness, and that there is a share for them in what is the business of college athletics. But I got into coaching. My dad was a coach, and I got into coaching to develop people and to help people have a great experience playing college football. I had a great experience playing college football at Millikan for Carl Pelker. Just tremendous experience, great friendships, and all the things that we learn from college sports, the overcoming adversity, the mental toughness, the grit, the competition, those are life skills. And that's what I love about football. I love about sports. We're able to teach those things. So we're still doing that every day. And I don't think name, image, and likeness changes that. I think this is a platform and an opportunity for us as coaches to guide and develop these young people. And so if the players can benefit from that and still have that experience, I think it's great.
Well, Coach, I think I speak for a lot of people when I say I think it's been great to watch the season that you guys, the Naval Academy, have all had this season. It's been fun to watch in the midst of a college football season with so much change, and I know people are looking forward to watching the rest of what you guys can do this season. Again, 21st in the AP poll and plenty of great games ahead on the schedule. So thank you so much for the time this morning, Coach. We really appreciate it. Best of luck, and we look forward to watching your team.
Thanks a lot, guys. Beat Air Force and beat Navy.
Thanks,
there we
Coach.
go. Jeff Monken, the head coach of the undefeated Army Black Knights football team, Dad.
It's amazing and just shows you the honor of that place that they put those games ahead of. And talking about possibly the Navy AAC championship game, not the Commanders Cup, the championship game may determine whether they get in the playoffs. But he talks about the games being more important, now that's against Navy in a championship game, but not the natural Army Navy game. I mean, it is unreal what they put on those games. And I couldn't even, I have so much respect for the armed forces and the coaches of the armed forces. I couldn't even say good luck except against Notre Dame. I didn't even feel right saying that. So I wasn't going to say that.
Yeah, no, it's a tough game every year because you understand what they represent is so much more than football. But we talked about it before we met with Blake Horvath from Navy last week that, yeah, you could have an Army-Navy. Like right now, Navy losing that game to Notre Dame doesn't matter for them in the American. It wasn't a conference game. And so Army and Navy still 1-2 in the AAC right now. And so you could have them meet in that game that has a ton of weight depending on how a team like Boise State season finishes in the Mountain West as they jockey for that position of the highest ranked group of 5 conference champion. But you could have these guys meet for the AAC title game, which would also be a home game, which I think they had won around the pandemic because of some of the discrepancies there. But otherwise, in the history of this rivalry, it's always been a neutral site game. And so much changing about that, where you could have the actual Army-Navy game played after the announcement of the college football playoff field that could involve one of these teams, specifically Army, now that they remain ranked and unbeaten.
And the Army-Navy game after the championship game, if they were to play again, means absolutely nothing to everybody except Army and Navy, to whom it means everything. Everything.
Yeah. A game very different from the rest of the world. By the way, that Army-Notre Dame game we talk about will be played at Yankee Stadium. Perfect segue time. Coming up next, the World Series got started this weekend. The Dodgers already getting out to a roaring start here with one major caveat. The latest on Shohei Ohtani as we check in with Jake Storiale on the fate of his New York Yankees here on GoJo and Golic. All right, we talked a lot of football from over the weekend, but we know we got games 1 and 2 of the World Series in the books as well. The Dodgers handle their business, win at home out in Los Angeles. A little bit of a scare in game 2 as two-way star, now one-way star this year, Shohei Ohtani, sliding into second, comes up a little bit lame, that shoulder injury. It sounds like he's expected to play tonight in game 3, which I don't know if our next guest feels good about that or not. Jake Storiale from John Boy Media here, kind enough to talk to us at Talkin' Jake on Twitter. How are you feeling about that news? As a fan of baseball, as someone who covers this, obviously, may be very happy, but as the man currently wearing the pinstripes turtleneck, I can't imagine that's music to your ears.
Hey guys, I'm doing great. you can hear it. No, man, it's it is what it is, right? Like I've got people in our office like Googling 1996 playoff run because they lose the first 2 to the Braves. You're watching what you eat in the morning if they do find it tonight and you got to run something back. So honestly, not doing great. Game 1 is currently haunting Yankee fans because they should have had that one. But, hey, you win tonight, and then it's a bullpen day, and then it's Garrett Cole, so you start getting yourself in the fan cycle. But, yeah, it's do or die vibes tonight, right? Like, you can't go down 3-0 to a team like this. You just got to win one game tonight, and if they do, yeah, World Series back on. If they don't, you're looking at people in the front office you don't even know to try to fire them.
I'm somewhat amazed that Shohei Ohtani is going to be playing after looking at him leave the field with that shoulder injury. That was surprising. But hey, no need to worry about him. When you're worrying about what's up with Aaron Judge in the postseason,
man, it's we are Yankee fans. Normally I come on here, I've got my John Boy Media gear on, and we talk baseball and we're friendly. It all started because we're Yankee fans. The hat's on today. And we went through some of the old numbers, and it was like, okay, Aaron Judge before the 21 postseason, like the numbers are there. Like in that 21 postseason, it got ugly, and that whole team got ugly. So you're like, okay, maybe there's a ripple effect there. This has been tough. He got the homer off Class A, which was one of the cooler moments of the postseason. But outside of that, there's nothing. And it's tough because you're hearing all the swing experts say his swing's just a little off right now, and you're like, well, that's the problem. So I don't know, man. I'm seeing, all the Yankee kids are doing the like, hey, we're going to open up tonight's game. Give him the Trey Turner standing ovation. And I'm like, part of me loves that. Sure, support your guy, all that. And then the other part of me is like, hey, Yankees World Series game, you should already be standing. Like, I don't know, like get loud and all that. He's got to have some good at bats, man. He's expanding the zone. Like it's all the baseball slump stuff that, I don't know. He took a 2-0 fastball from Yamamoto in the 6th inning of last game that was 94 down the middle that you're just like, where you at, man? Because I don't know, if I was trying to get myself out of a slump, it would be like, hey, maybe I'm going to sit for one good heater. And if I have to punt one at bat to try to get something at bat, maybe that's how it works. But at this point, man, something's got to change. So I don't know if it's cage work or I don't know if they're going to shuffle the lineup, but something's got to happen for the big fella.
Certainly that big fella struggling, but Giancarlo Stanton on the other side has been sensational this postseason run. I know he's a guy that's had a bit of a different relationship at times with the local media there and some of the scrutiny around his performance here. How would you encapsulate this postseason run that we've seen from him venturing into some all-time postseason home run numbers?
Well, we've seen it with Big G, and that's the cool part. Like the 2020 season, he was knocking around Glass now and kind of anyone else who stepped on the mound. The 2021 wild card game, he hit 2 off the green monster. That reminder, if that game could have been in Yankee Stadium if they won one more regular season game, that those probably would have been 2 home runs, but he hits those line drives that hit that massive wall out there. So this was kind of the test of like, is Giancarlo really that guy? And he clearly is, man. And it's crazy that with Judge and Soto, Giancarlo's kind of become the third wheel a little bit. And during this postseason, it's now 30 plus games coming up on 40, and he's got a 1.0 OPS. Like he He is that guy. He is if you just look at his baseball card and you forget some of these injuries and, sometimes his regular season running is not the prettiest thing you've seen on a baseball field, but when the moment matters, he's about it. And his quotes say that, which that's really refreshing to see from an athlete. Cause there's a lot of it's baseball and hey, you gotta, let's get the pitch next game and one day at a time and watch it. Giancarlo's like, the moment's bigger. This matters more. So that's why I'm doing it. So to hear that, it's kind of like, yeah, man. And he's, that's the other thing. There's been a lot of lineup talk. He's been the baddest man in the world. You kind of have to move him up. And Freddie Freeman hits the walk-off grand slam in that first game. He moved down in the lineup because they were facing a lefty the next day. Now I know there's obviously some lefty-righty stuff there, but this is the postseason, and every sports DVD starts with sacrifice and all that stuff. Like, dude, Giancarlo, know what the Dodgers don't want to see? More Giancarlo Stanton. So you got to make that happen.
The Dodgers, the way they built their team, it was going to be an unbelievable disappointment if they didn't win the World Series. But Yankees getting the World Series is old hat, it would seem, especially Yankees and Dodgers. So if the Yankees, for some reason, don't win the World Series, I know it's a disappointment, but are you talking changes on the team because of it?
I mean, obviously you're talking some changes. You want to get better. And right now the biggest thing that's just glaring is that the lineup depth is not there right now. And the bottom half of that lineup, which it's ironic that it's horribly lefty coming off a year where they were horribly righty. Lineup depth is kind of one of the biggest things I've been pushing on our Talkin' Baseball show for a couple years. And you just, it sounds obvious, right? Like, oh, deep lineup, that's good, Jake. Yeah, but go look at the Phillies and obviously what they've formed, and go look at the Diamondbacks run last year, like relentless top to bottom. Houston's always had a chunk of that, in these playoff innings where guys are rolling out different bullpen arms or the third time through for the starter or whatever, new baseball thing you're into, you can't give them any easy outs. And right now the Yankees bottom part of the lineup is that it's all lefty and it's guys that aren't really coming through that. That would be the biggest change. Cause look, you're finding bullpen arms. I mean, look at some of the guys pitching in. You're seeing guys off waivers that are coming in for wipeout innings right now. That the lineup depth, I think, is the biggest concern for Yankees fans right now. That'll have to be addressed.
All right, so there's obviously been some bad vibes because the Yankees are down at this point in the series. There's still plenty of time left in this. I do want to focus on some of the good, though, here overall, Jake, because we all like it when people like our thing. I cover college football. Dad played in the NFL. Loving baseball and watching the attention that this series is getting overall, averaging 14.5 million viewers, the best since 2017. What's it been like to see so many casual fans gravitating towards the series of this caliber?
It's awesome. Like, I'll start off with that great analysis, but it really is, man. And it's everything, like the LA and New York, bang, like Japan, like welcome to the party. Like they're all in on this. And then dude, it's baseball, right? The two home run leaders, Judge and Ohtani. Like it's literally everywhere you look around on this. Giancarlo, like he's an afterthought in this, a former MVP. He's not an afterthought anymore, I should say. But even, dude, like Freddie Freeman and Rizzo, like these are two guys that are going to have statues in different cities. Freddie's deciding where his statue's going to be. I'll let Atlanta fans deal with that for today. But man, there's so many good layers to this. And like you were kind of saying before, like LA and New York, right? These teams have met up in the World Series. This is their 11th time. First since 81. So, it's not like we've been seeing this every 3 years. Oh, here's New York and LA again. That this is it's really cool to see, and I will let hey, I guess this is how I can bring more baseball people on the Yankees train, which is very different to the replies on my Twitter, but let's make this more of a series, right? Like it's really cool if Judge and Ohtani are both larger than life and hitting home runs and having these moments. Freddie Freeman walk-off grand slam in Game 1 of the World Series. But if the Yanks get swept in, hey, that's going to be my new pitch. If the Yanks get swept in 4, that's bad for baseball. So let's go.
There we go. All right, well, before we let you go then, Jake, what's the key then? Tonight, loading up for Game 3, back here in the Bronx, what do the Yankees need to do to make sure that we don't get towards a 4-game sweep?
It's another obnoxious thing, but you got to get the lead early. You have to. Like, it's Walker Buehler's been a mixed bag a little bit, although his last start, he looked good, and that guy has all the moxie in the world. But they're bullpenning the next game. So if the Dodgers are down, they are not going to go to their A bullpen weapon. So you just make the gauntlet that much easier for yourself. If you get that early lead, Dave Roberts does not want to go to his good bullpen today, if they don't have to, obviously. That's your path. That if you win today, then you have a bullpen day the next day, which are tough. They're brutal, but if that one guy has a bad day at the office, now you've got a chance there. And that's Garrett Cole for Game 5. So that's the honest, like, what Yankee fans are telling themselves. Hey, if you get through today, there is a legitimate path, and you start doing the home field and all of that stuff. But yeah, you got to get a lead today. You can against Walker Buehler. That being said, I'm flash forwarding to myself in the 6th inning today, and it's a 1-0 game, and it's scary. But all of this past 48 hours of drama and fear. Whoa. Speaking of drama, man, they could have had Game 1. They gave up 2 sack flies, with one actually had an error tied to it, and one was a funky defensive play that led to it. That they could have easily had that game, and it would have been 1-1. Hey, we took home field advantage from them. Instead, it's 2-0, and we're horrified. So win a game tonight, and you're right back in it.
There you go. See, cool heads prevailing here. It's not all doom and gloom. I mean, hell, you got other phases of your life where things are going well. You're a Broncos fan, and you guys get to go out there and beat the poor Carolina Panthers to a pulp. You feeling good about the Bo Nix experience so far?
Man, I'm feeling good about seeing a 5-3 record. The past 2 teams they've played are going through their business, but that's none of my business. So that's good. No, I mean the fact that it's a watchable product on the field. Now, maybe let's not check in after Ravens Chiefs coming up. But the fact that they're competing again, and man, you said, talking about what you love to cover. Dude, college football has been amazing this year. Like I think one of the first times I told you guys, as we've gotten into the world of baseball and it's become our jobs and livelihoods, I was wondering what was going to happen with football. And like for a lot of Americans, it's become my like kind of reprieve. Like Sunday, I'm going to lock in, set the fantasy lineup, and I'm going to drink in as much red zone as I can. And college football, I know there's some people that are worried about the new playoff system, and it makes losses not matter as much. The thing I've been getting excited for, if we get some rematches, man. Like, if I get an Ohio State-Oregon game, that's must-watch television. And, like, college football hasn't fully had that in previous years. So, I don't know. I was kind of getting myself hyped to talk to you guys and maybe throw in that little football at the end. And then I was like, no, Yankees baseball. We win tonight. We win the World Series. But, no, the where football is at for the weekends and just kind of getting away. And the product has been really good this year on both sides. That I've been loving it.
No, there's no doubt. You know what? There's plenty of room to go around. You're dynamic. You got a lot on your plate here. That's why we appreciate you giving us some time, because we know you can do it all here. Guys, check them out. Follow them at Talkin' Jake on Twitter. Obviously, check out all the live streams going on during the World Series. I know some Dodgers fans have enjoyed drinking in your guys' pain, but hopefully you get a little bit of joy here mixed in the next couple of games now that the Yankees are back at home. Jake, we appreciate the time, brother. Thank you.
Hey, thank you guys. Go Yanks.
Like you said, Dad, this is a series that's been good for business for everybody involved covering sports, let alone covering baseball. But the Yankees being able to extend this thing and actually make it a series would go a long way to help that out.
It's the series baseball wanted. It's a series most casual fans wanted. But let me tell you, hopefully it'll turn into a better series than what we've had.
Well, I don't know if most casual fans, I feel like there's still a lot of people that hate them and everything that they all stand for, but at the very least for us, in the business of caring about us, this has worked out pretty well.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here. And fellas, we have Monday Night Football coming our way between the Giants and Steelers this evening. Last week, Mike Tomlin really shook things up when he started Russell Wilson. So take a listen to him from last Tuesday on his QB1 and pay attention to his little smirk when he answers.
Take first team reps when we begin tomorrow. We'll see where the week leads us.
See where the week leads us. What do you guys think? Is he just pressing all the buttons on purpose here now?
Oh, yeah. Listen, I mean, Mike Tomlin is nothing if not very aware and usually meme-worthy here. And Dad actually made it a little bit easier. I saw the report the other day on, I think it was Fox NFL Sunday, that Justin Fields is actually dealing with a little bit of a hamstring this week, too, in a week where they thought about maybe using more of him in a package with this Pittsburgh Steelers passing attack on Monday night. So makes the decision a little bit easier here. But after what we saw in the last week, there's no doubt now it's Russell Wilson back here in the driver's seat until further notice, and feels like this should be another good night where against this Giants secondary, he's got a good chance to keep developing this downfield passing attack.
Yeah, the key is going to be the rush. The Giants have, 3 defenders with 15 or more pressures: Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and B.J. Ojulari. So they can get after the passer. And Russell Wilson is not the runner that Justin Fields is. So while the back end is struggling for the Giants, the rush has been pretty good. But where Pittsburgh can make hay is against the run. I mean, the Giants are giving up 138 yards rushing a game. So between Najee Harris, I mean, the way he's been running, I really think that the Pittsburgh Steelers can control the ball with the rushing attack.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem I have is even for the Giants where, hey, you've got this strength on the D-line. Dexter Lawrence is one of the most unique physical forces of nature in the NFL, playing nose guard the way that he does as a guy who you've got to legitimately, especially on passing downs, dedicate multiple bodies to. The Steelers' offensive line group has had to continue to shuffle guys in here with so many different offensive line combinations, especially due to guys being injured in the middle of that line. He's going to demand that gravity, but man, it's really hard to get to some of these critical pass rushing downs when other teams can run it. And you look and you mentioned Najee Harris, over 100 yards in each of the last 2 games. That, to me, Dad, was the most encouraging sign from the Russell Wilson experiment getting that start in the last game, is it didn't diminish the Steelers' rushing attack that is still, as of this moment, the strength of this football team, and that I worried they were chipping into in the name of trying to get George Pickens more touches with Russell Wilson at quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you at the end of the day, you have to know who you are. You're a running team that plays some excellent defense, and that's got to be kind of the hallmark. And if you have to pass to get a win, hopefully you have the ability to do it. But they're a win away from having a game lead in the North over Baltimore after Baltimore's really inexplicable loss to the Browns, who have 2 wins on the year. So Pittsburgh at the top of this division, I don't think many people saw that coming.
It's so interesting, though, and it's a great point to bring up given what we know about Baltimore this season. And Mike Tomlin, who had to go against what a lot of people thought was the best intentions of this team, starting Russell Wilson after Justin Fields had led them to that 4-2 start, had them in position to go out and do this. But if you look in a division, Dad, where we know it's, hey, you got to win your division first, and it's a styles mates fight thing, what do you need to beat the Baltimore Ravens this year? You've got to be able to throw the ball deep. And so Mike Tomlin, I'm sure part of him understands, hey, in order just to get out of our division that we've now got a legitimate shot to win, I need a guy that's going to be able to push the ball downfield more often than not. And so, yes, while the run game's the foundation, it's been very clear, hey, the Steelers are ahead right now, but we believe Baltimore is the class of this division. If you're going to have a shot at beating the Ravens, you got to have someone that can push it downfield where that defense is most vulnerable. And after that first game where, again, Russell Wilson comes in and sets a franchise record for passing yards in a debut in a Steelers uniform, it does seem like at the very least they're trying to gain trust in that facet of the game, knowing what the end goal in mind is.
You know, special teams doesn't get talked about enough. There are 3 phases of the game, and Danny Smith's a special team coach in Pittsburgh, and he is absolutely beloved. And they have blocked a kick in 3 straight games. First time team's done that since the 17 Patriots. So those can be field position changers, game changers if you score on it. But 3 straight games with block kicks, and I just love how they celebrate a block kick by going over and celebrating with Danny Smith. I mean, he's just such a cool dude.
Danny Smith's been there forever. I mean, I did training camp with the Steelers in 2013, and Danny Smith was the same level of beloved by the people in that building then. Special teams coordinator, such a unique relationship because you're dealing with everyone from both sides of the football. You're dealing with guys who are fighting for their football lives. And so to see the passion in that relationship and to see him give them opportunities to go out there and impact the game like that, I think so many of us look at special teams as a throwaway, and it's not treated like that in Pittsburgh. It gets value both in the meeting time that you get behind closed doors in that building, but also certainly the investment from the special teams coach and what he's been able to do. Dad, something else that I think speaks to what you will enjoy here, big milestone game in this one. I could not believe reading this stat about Cam Hayward going into this game, who's getting ready to make longtime veteran defensive tackle for this team who had to kind of fight for his future with this squad. We know there was a little bit of discrepancy in the last couple of years about his contract, his performance relative to injury. That all's well that ends well here. He now gets set to make his 202nd regular season start in the game coming up tonight. The most ever by a Steelers defender. And Dad, you know better than I do the history of this place, but with the names that have come through that building on the defensive side of the football, for Cam Hayward to now be the most tenured among them in terms of starts in the regular season is a pretty insane accomplishment by a guy who's going to have a real good gold jacket case when it's all said and done.
Yeah, he's breaking a tie of Hall of Famer. And by the way, most of the old-time defenders for the Steelers, you start off by saying Hall of Famer. But he's going to break a tie with Hall of Famer defensive back Donnie Shell. It is amazing. I did a Pittsburgh game a couple of weeks ago, and Mel Blount was on the sideline again, still looking like he could play, wearing that cowboy hat. I mean, it's just the stud defense that they had when they were in their heyday was just ridiculous.
Mel Blount's a wild one, man. When you're a rookie at the Steelers, when I went there, you got to go for a day at like a ropes course almost set up at Mel Blount's ranch outside of the city. And he walks up on you, and it's this 6'4" black cowboy that's going up there with the boots and the spurs on. And you think about him roaming that secondary the way so many Steelers greats have, both in the secondary, the guys up front that you've had over the years. Cam Hayward gets to etch his name in history alongside and now ahead of those guys, at least in this regard. Dad, we talked a lot about the Steelers for this game, though. Giants on the other side, been a struggle on offense. We know Daniel Jones got pulled in the last game in a way that brought, he spoke up and wasn't a fan of here. How much is the rest of the season now Brian Daboll just fighting for his job each and every week? Because that's kind of what it feels like we're at.
Oh, I think so. Daniel Jones to be the quarterback, Brian Daboll to keep his job. The one bright spot is Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors has been everything he is cracked up to be, just not on a very good team. But he is an absolute star in the making at the wideout position. But yeah, they continue the struggle, and Daniel Jones continues the struggle of he'll get a chance to play somewhere else if it's not for the Giants. But I do think his time as a Giants quarterback is coming to an end.
We know John Mara gave both coach and GM the vote of confidence this last week, and take that for what you will, given the fact that we know the history of the public vote of confidence, even with this organization. But Dad, you're right. I think it does begin and end with Malik Neighbors, who seems like your best path towards success at this point for an offense that struggled. He said last week, in a week where it felt like he was underutilized coming back off injury, hey, I'm open, I'm out here. And that's been the case for the majority of the season. So if you're looking for a path to victory, it's going to have to be, hey, you've got to do whatever it is schematically you can to make sure that there are 2 sets of hands and 4 eyes on TJ Watt at all times on the field, and then do what you can to push the ball down to Malik Neighbors, because he's by far your most dynamic and consistently effective weapon.
This is going to come down to Malik Neighbors making plays down the field and that defensive front for the Giants, putting pressure on Russell Wilson. Because, again, he's not the runner Justin Fields is. So if they can get pressure and harass Russell Wilson, they'll have a chance.
Yep, exactly. You're going to have to do something extraordinary because, again, as we talked about, this Steelers team in all 3 phases is going to challenge you. And right now, there have been very few phases of Giants football that are up to that task. Coming up next, the head of Monday Night Football will take you and finish off the show the way we always do with this, that, and the third. And why are we so bad at statues? Next. All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave the show a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday here from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. If you got to miss us live or any of our great guests, thank you to Army head football coach Jeff Monken for joining us in the top of the second hour, and Jake Storiale from Talking Baseball over at John Boy Media. You miss any of that, check it out wherever you get our podcast or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. Guys, let's get to this, that, and the third. And start off with a little bit of Halloween flavor. We know it's a big week for a lot of people getting to play dress up. And for one man, it was a great chance to just go back and call to one of the Olympic moments that defined the games in Paris. He paid homage to the French pole vaulter who lost because of his penis. Anthony Ammirati, the 21-year-old pole vaulter, became a viral sensation from the Olympics, where he failed the qualifier for the final on his third event. Now, he weighed on and later clarified that he did not, in fact, get DQ'd because his dong hit the pole. But, Dad, it still makes for a great costume, although difficult to walk around the party with that pole being as cleared sideways as it is.
Yeah, you'd have to turn your body sideways and such, but A for effort on that. And did the pole vaulter really fail? Did he win overall? I mean, Jesse, maybe he got an OnlyFans account after this.
He definitely won. Going viral for that is like, come on. I mean, it's a W.
It's at the very least, if he's single, it's an easy Hinge profile picture. Like that shot from the Olympic Games. A, you're there. B, free advertising. Like, you know, it's never hurt anybody there. Again, I do have questions about the costume, though, because like this Halloween, I had the Pop-Tart costume that we saw our friend Nicole Arbach get. I brought over here. I famously busted my legs out on Instagram and gave people the not safe for work version of the costume. I wore pants because there were potentially going to be kids in the area, and I don't want to scar them for life or end up on some sort of watch list. But it's an incredibly difficult costume to move around in. And God forbid you're at a place like I was that had candles lit. You're just one big bit of kindling. Like, I had to make sure I didn't catch on fire at this Halloween party. And so you do have to be mindful in the costume. Yes, very funny. But with this one, you're going to be knocking stuff over. You're not used to having 4.5 foot of PVC pipe going sideways along you there. You could be a disaster if this is in some home. You're right at table height.
It could be removable. Yeah. We don't know. And maybe that's just for the photo, and then you can, like, take it off and hold it.
I was going to say, it's the shock value of the initial picture of, oh, that's a great costume. And then you wonder if he can take it off to mingle at the party. But the whole idea is to have it on, to have the pole under your junk. I mean, that's the whole that's the whole thrill of this costume, right? Is junk.
Yeah, and he's at a bar too, so there's a lot of people in there. It looks like it's more of a brewery, so there might be some space. But Dad, to your point, if you don't have the bar underneath there, you're just a dude in a French wrestling singlet who stuffed his crotch. Yeah. That's a little bit tougher of a Halloween costume to explain, although still probably a decent conversation starter. So there's that. So are you guys dressing up for Halloween at all? Do you have any reason? Jesse, I know you've got young kids. Do you do trick-or-treating? Do you have a mommy costume ready?
Yeah, we're doing trick-or-treating, and my daughter's being a princess, so my husband's being her horse, and my son is being a bat, and so I'm just wearing a cape and being like a vampire, so I'll be a vampire holding a bat. Yeah, so we do have like our costumes for trick-or-treating.
Do you have a great kind of trick-or-treating neighborhood with a lot of kids?
Oh, yes. And like lots of king-size candy bars, lots of like intense decorations. So 10 out of 10.
Oh, king-size candy bars are key. Oh, absolutely, positively key.
Major key.
Yep. It was the one thing that I learned growing up from my parents when it came to Halloween, that when I was living in Connecticut and I was a homeowner in a neighborhood that was really densely populated with kids that were trick-or-treating age, I made sure I was the house on the block that everybody knew. I wanted to have a reputation where it's like, oh, no, you need to make sure you get to Mike's house on Halloween because he's got the good stuff there, and I delivered each and every year. So I remain proud of that, Dad. I know that's something that was important for you guys to instill in us at an early age.
I took it as a badge of honor when a mother who with a very young child asked, could you possibly have some smaller candy bars? I don't really want my 2-year-old eating a large size Hershey bar. And I kind of smiled. I said, yes, I get that. But I was smiling inside saying, yes, mission accomplished.
Yeah, I said skill issue. Tell your 2-year-old to get their weight up and start to pull their weight around here because this ain't weak candy up in this thing. Speaking of pulling their weight, Jesse, let's get to that. Obi Toppin obviously has a job on the court, but was able to help out in a pinch in one of the most athletically gifted ways I've ever seen.
Yeah, so the basketball during their game was stuck at the top of the backboard, and he just look at him. He jumps up to loose this ball, and you watch this video and you just know that the NBA is showing. He went to work the next day and there was a drug test for him. 100p. You can't just jump that high and think you're getting away without getting drug tested.
In a world full of freak athletes in the NBA, the fact that you saw all these other guys standing around because the ball is stuck up underneath the shot clock. Like, it isn't a spot that even in this league is inaccessible to most of these guys. And Obi Toppin's just lurking back there. And I do wonder how many of his team's dad on the Pacers were looking around like, all right, when's he going to do it? Because if you can jump that high, you've got to do it early and often. Like, I would be doing it every chance I got. And so I'm sure when his teammates saw him up there, they knew what time it was, and he was going to use this as another chance to show off the gifts.
And nobody from either team was even attempting.
Nope.
Because the one thing you don't want to do is make a jump for it and miss it. You don't want to do that. So you have to, in your own heart, know your physical abilities and tell yourself, I can't reach that. And it's going to look really bad if I try and jump and I don't reach that. Not Obi Toppin. He went for it. I would love to jump that high once in my life, but I would be afraid to come down because I would be so high in the air, I would come down and hurt myself landing.
Your knees, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I genuinely think about that all the time. No one talks about how scary that's got to be landing. If you've ever jumped from a decent height, you know what that takes. But I guess if you can have the kind of power output that gets you up there, you got the kind of power that can also make pretty good shock absorbers on the back end. So congratulations to him. Jesse, maybe they'll build him a statue. Let's get to the third and talk about why we apparently in 2024, as we can do so many things through the advent of technologies, suck at statues.
Yeah, Dwayne Wade got his statue revealed by the Heat, and it is absolutely awful. My question is this to you guys. Is this a thing where, like, an artist is hired and the people that hired the artist feel that they cannot speak about the artist's interpretation? Is it some kind of a silent? Because if I'm the people that commissioned this statue, I'd be like, we got to go back to the drawing board here. It's that bad. Look at this. It's got the Ronaldo statue beat.
It really does.
Awful.
And Dad, we mentioned, like, we've got 3D printers now. We've got the benefit of all this technology to help people on the front end of this that sculptors of the past could never have dreamed of. And I understand you've got to build these out of different materials. It's got to be able to withstand the weather on the outside. But I just can't fathom the fact that we have not improved in this area to the level that keeps showing up like this. Like, that sucks for Dwayne Wade. You have a statue. That's awesome. It's a testament to a great career, and you've got to go look at a guy that looks decidedly nothing like you every day.
Who didn't have the guts, like you said, Jesse, who commissioned that to say, no, we're not displaying this. I mean, how they had to lie through their teeth and say, yeah, hey, really good. And when inside they're thinking, this is horrible, but why not say it? I mean, this statue is going up forever, and it's horrible.
If we've learned anything about spending money, though, it doesn't always equal quality. Because this makes me think, like, this is the statue version of the Fanatics Nike jerseys that we saw pop up for Major League Baseball, where they pay them all this money because they got a guy, and then the guy goes out and produces some of the worst jerseys known to man. Whoever the statue guy is here, I don't know how much he's getting paid, what the history is, but we got to figure out a better way right now. This is like the Marvel CGI that went awry years ago.
Yeah,
how does
horrible.
the statue guy think that it's a good interpretation of Dwayne? Just look at Dwayne Wade and look at the statue. How does the statue guy interpret that as, yeah, nailed it?
Bad.
If I know If I know our friends over at the Dan Le Batard show well, and I think I do, considering this is a very Miami story, if anyone can get the statue maker on the show to answer a lot of these questions, it's going to be Dan and Stu Gott. So I am looking forward to that very much here. We're looking forward to you guys downloading, subscribing, rating, reviewing the show, leaving us a 5-star rating, and checking us out here live Monday through Friday. Thanks so much. Enjoy Monday Night Football. We'll talk to y'all tomorrow.